Oh, 2020. How I will not miss this passing year. Ladies and gents, Happy New Year? Nah, seriously. Before I get into it, I just want to say I hope that next year is much better for everyone. And I mean everyone out there in our home world we call Earth. No BS, no fluff. Straight up. If you're listening to my voice or seeing my face, I hope you're kicking ass and taking names. And better yet, I hope next year you do twice as well as you did this passing year. And if you didn't do well, I hope things do a 180 as soon as you awaken in the year 2021. For now, though, we're going to jump into the future and talk about dashed hopes and failed dreams. That's right. We're finally talking about the game that demanded your attention for all of 2020. Yep, Cyberpunk 2077. I have been wading my way almost waist deep in the bugs and ticks of 2077. But you know what? Fuck the haters. I'm glad I got the opportunity to. This year has been full of mishaps, blunders, fuck ups, challenges, tragedies, and disasters in fluctuating order. And though I can only speak for myself, I take my pleasure where I can get it in this burning world. So, with my body bruised, my skin burning, and my bones broken, I've been enjoying all Night City had to offer me. And man, does it offer a lot at first glance. But a lot of people will miss the gems for the dirt and grime. The majority of the footage you should be seeing is recorded from the Xbox One console. And honestly, for a game that just launched, it is surprisingly smooth. I say all this with no jest, no sarcasm, no pun or prod at wit. I'm being dead ass. I like Cyberpunk 2077. I like it as it was delivered, knowing full well that over the course of months, hopefully years, the game will be pumped full of additional content, including missions, items, vehicles, locations, hopefully additional endings. Come on, it's 2020. We've seen the launch of games from publishers big and small, and we've had our hearts broken by countless buggy messes. We've been disappointed by the crashes and issues of games like Atlas and Ark Survival Evolved, but we continue to play and hand over our money. My question to the viewers is, how many Mass Effect Andromedas or No Man's Skies, Battlefront 2s, and Fallout 76s have we seen? How many bad attempts at new games will we continue to see? And how many more are we really going to consistently complain about without doing something significant about it other than complain? Despite the overall criticism, Cyberpunk 2077, in my humble opinion, is a well thought out and cleverly executed game, and we were lucky to see it in our lifetime. This is just the hustle, and I'm not sponsored or getting paid for this, so drop your 2 cents in the comment section and help me end this year with a bang. Cyberpunk 2077 did not have a perfect launch, but despite the negative lashings it has received in recent press and review, not many games in current or recent years have offered or operated at the capacity Cyberpunk 2077 can and has. And even on the graphically inferior last generation consoles, the game still functions relatively smooth despite the bugs, synonymous with games brand new to the market. Yes, this is relatively smooth. At the time of writing this script, the game is less than 3 weeks old, and though it did go through an 8-year development cycle, again, this game is less than 3 weeks old. How many games have we seen that were broken, underdeveloped, missing features, still in pre-release or in beta status? Star Citizen, anyone? To get it out of the way now, if you were to ask me if you should buy Cyberpunk 2077 right now, I would straight up tell you no. Because asking the question implies you weren't invested enough to know what you were getting into. First, not every choom off the street knows what it means to be an edge runner, so you gotta know your tech. If you're playing on what I like to call last gen, then buckle up. Cause though the world is vibrant, rich, and expansive, the Chrome you're packing ain't gonna show you the detail this world can truly all buy. And let me tell you now, it is a night and day difference. From the moment I launched the game on the Series X console, I immediately noticed the dramatic change in detail, reminding you all that I had played more than 60 hours of the game by this point. On the Xbox One, the game had graphical smudges, missing dialogue from a host of NPCs, and even the dreaded glitch mission that even by the end of my final playthrough on the Xbox Series X, was indeed still bugged and left uncompleted by my speed attempt at 100% clip. Suffice it to say, like most games coming out in recent years, you're probably better off waiting at least half a year for additional content to be released to truly enjoy all Night City has to offer. But if you're like me, you question, why wait? I'm going to avoid hopping on a soapbox till near the end, but I was, for the most part, pleased with my visit to Night City. Because Night City is a beast of a town. To say she is demanding would be an understatement. There have been a few times I felt my implants in cyberware were gonna crash, and a handful of times my Chrome couldn't handle the experience and did. But I've managed to keep the vibe pretty preem. To me, a self-proclaimed solo, I relish an opportunity to jack in, typically finding my pleasure through expressions of freedom within the game space. Rightfully so, right? Cyberpunk 2077 is supposed to be an RPG, built from a legendary tabletop game that people still play today. And that was what interested me from the jump. Role-playing games, or RPGs, are designed to allow you to take the position and life of the character you either create or portray. In Cyberpunk 2077 and the locale of Night City, you play as V, and it's either eat or be eaten. And during my playthrough, I quickly realized I'd rather be the predator. Maybe I'm losing you, but at first, I approached the game with the mentality that nearly all of my choices might lead to someone's death, including the character I was playing as. Due to this rationale, my initial playthrough led me to the horrible ending, dubbed The Devil, and man was I hurt by it. With that said, no, Cyberpunk 2077 isn't as grand with its character development as, say, Skyrim, but I found myself more engaged with the travel and world, choosing to drive and run most places, rather than fast travel, which is widely available. Having enjoyed an engaging story arc that left me feeling a bit raw, I have sunk nearly another 60 hours into the game, playing some of the early quests provided to the Corpo and Street Kid playthroughs. And though introductions to these two different storylines were interesting to begin, I swiftly found that I was left wanting by the length of the differing introductions. I can be honest by saying I didn't expect for the different storylines to be incredibly long or anything like that, but after only a couple hours of play, you'll easily find the introduction complete, and you'll be thrown into the scop and kibble of the game world. That being said, this is an RPG, and there weren't many points where I felt like my life path didn't have an overall impact on the conversations or experiences I forged for my characters. That being said, the life paths are more like character types, and choosing one only changes your character's perspective on the world in general. How you play still is completely role-played by the player, meaning your choices carry the game forward rather than the character's life path. All in all, the game isn't dramatically open-ended, but you will feel like your choices relatively matter in the grand scheme of it all. You can choose to rescue, abandon, kill, and ignore nearly any NPC in the game, and results seem to have an impact even if minuscule. Gear, weapons, and cyberware are your equipment that truly make your gameplay customizable. However, once you hit mid-game, you might want to tweak your difficulty, depending on how much of a challenge you enjoy. I never played the game on the easiest difficulty, but normal is a gentle breeze unless you're brazen and rush into combat idiotically. Very hard is a challenge that still felt easy at times, but I played a quick slash swordsman, reminiscent of Kenshi from Rurouni Kenshin, hitting enemies over the head with my katana in one slash that left them wounded but not dead. I was able to perfect this build with cyberware like the target analysis and my Smexy legendary black unicorn katana, which I crafted only after I had all the components and the necessary perk points. Just like any RPG, in order to pull off the greatest feats, you're going to have to build your character correctly. And once you've placed your skill points, that's it. You can respec your attribute points, but it is an expensive trip, so choose your abilities wisely. Speaking of wisely, how you approach combat is a similar beast, as leaping before looking is a mistake that will often lead to a restart of one of the many autosaves the game provides. Cyberpunk 2077 is the perfect climax for my year. I said it, I'm sticking to it. Because video gaming and Justice go together like peanut butter and chocolate. And though 2020 has had a whole host of misses, it's shocking that Cyberpunk 2077 would sadly be everything I hoped it would, yet still disappoint so many others. I remember a time when purchasing a video game was an experience that led to a host of new experiences. Unlike a VHS or a book, a video game in either cartridge or diskette form could provide hours, days, and perhaps years of entertainment. And the investment was typically the cost of going out to the local theater with the family. In the 90s, the concept of ownership was a bit different and created a different expectation for consumers, which in my humble opinion created an expectation within these hierarchies of companies and corporations, creating an atmosphere that their efforts must at least match the customer's investment. In the current day, subscriptions, sign-in verifications, and always online gaming is the norm. But how did we get here? And why didn't we complain about it then? This is still just a hustle, and even with a switch up in pacing, this is still gaming life. And a quick review of Cyberpunk 2077 is impossible. To wrap up my experience so far is a comparable challenge. But allow me to take a jab by saying I dig the game, and you can't please everybody. I guess what I'm saying, for me, it's nice to see that even a failed execution can often be a perfect foundation for something epic, if people are just willing to do the building. And it is my belief that CDPR will be interested in doing the building if they're not already planning to do so. Again, I am reminded of so many other games that have come out in recent years unfinished, broken, unplayable, or requiring a first day patch that I remember when there was no need for a first day patch. Technology continues to grow at a pace that continues to amaze me, and video games have remained at the cusp of that potential growth, with various systems propping up to capitalize on this phenomenon. Doesn't matter whether you play them or not, it's unlikely you've seen a rock big enough to hide the fact that the video game industry makes more than 100 billion yearly. More. I literally stopped trying to research the specific number or even an average for video game development costs to income. But there is a lot of income. So much so that investors and consumers will throw their money at the idea of the next big hit. And unfortunately, force the release of many a game that perhaps should have had more time under the cooker. That being said, I'm old enough to remember when you bought a game, it was either done or it wasn't. And if it wasn't, you got a refund and you were on your way. After decades of controversy, gaming is what it is. And DRM and pre-orders seem to be here to stay. But does it have to be this way? Enter my soapbox. Cyberpunk 2077 will be my official last pre-order. And I'm glad it was this game. First and foremost, because I truly have enjoyed nearly every minute of my time on Cyberpunk 2077, as it exists, previously on the Xbox One console and now on the Series X. As a $60 game, I have already spent over 80 hours playing it within a single playthrough, actually enjoying the content and exploring an expansively deep and wide world. However, I will say I have experienced a handful of weird glitches that have hindered my progress. But Night City keeps calling me, and I assure you, I don't plan to stay away. That being said, I have not made a habit of pre-ordering games, but there have been a great many I may have if I had the money to burn, and nearly all of them were not worth it in the long run. It is my intent to share what I believe are the main reasons I will never pre-order another game, why you should join this honorable crusade, and just why I think the haters should learn to keep their mouths shut. Pre-orders first started as a means of generating marketing data along with an early revenue for game developers. The idea was that instead of printing out a whole bunch of game copies that might or might not be purchased, pre-orders could give game developers the foresight into exactly how many copies they would need by launch. In other words, pre-orders were always designed to be a boom for the development team and not the consumer. This, for me personally, wouldn't be such a big deal if not for the countless game releases in years past that have been unfinished, or at the best case scenario, in dire need of a first day patch. However, allow me to complicate your perspective. As a lover of Microsoft and Xbox gaming, does anyone else remember 2013? When Microsoft decided to announce to the world that you would require an internet connection daily in order to play their games? I do. And it is something I have kept in mind since that announcement. Does anyone remember the assault on brick and mortar stores like GameStop and EB Games? When game developers tried their hardest to wipe out third-party distributors and reselling of games? Well, I sure do. I bring all this up to remind my viewers that despite the purpose of these games, they are still commodities designed to create profit. Digital rights management, or DRM, is defined as a systematic approach to copyright protection for digital media. The purpose of DRM is to prevent unauthorized redistribution of digital media and restrict the ways consumers can copy content they've purchased. Let's break this down a bit more. DRM is designed to protect the copyright or potential redistribution or duplication of a digital medium, originally to stop the literal copying of physical discs. If you're old enough, I'm sure you remember burning CDs or copying files for family members or friends of friends. DRM was literally designed to try and stop all that, including reselling to third-party brick and mortar sites like GameStop, or back then the dismantling of Napster and the likes of Pirate Bay. However, the majority of people had a vocal outcry against DRM, and many things were changed, and yet DRM protection still exists and the impact is no less prominent. Nowadays, it is almost unheard of for a gaming platform not to have internet connectivity, and for many generations of consoles, being online was almost a requirement to enjoy the games we came to own. Not only Xbox, but Nintendo as well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't Sony require you to be online in order to play your physical copies of your games? Or can you play them with no internet connection? I can only speak from experience, but DRM isn't just a thing. It's a way of business for many companies, corporations, and businesses worldwide. And in the date of 2020, it doesn't seem to be slowing down. Not only need you be online for most media, entertainment, or information in our current day, you also are required to give your personal information in order to have access to the various means of content. For me, this all comes down to a basic acknowledgement. Though I am willing and potentially able to afford the newest console, the newest game, and the additional technology necessary to enjoy that content will not always be available because I don't own it. Allow me to make an analogy. If you've been jumping around the channel, you might have seen my City of Heroes revival video, or heard me mention my endearment toward this franchise. Well, my endearment isn't toward the company, NCSoft, that created the original IP. No, my love is strictly for the IP. Reason being, I remember setting up my original account for City of Heroes, and I remember how excited I was to actually get into the game. I remember fondly how I felt when I reached level 50, and I remember a lot of the people I was able to befriend behind the persona of the Darkest Seraph. I remember all these experiences, yet I can no longer access the game because NCSoft decided to close up shop back in 2012. I remember investing in games like EX Steel, another NCSoft game I truly enjoyed, where months later, they decided the game wasn't lucrative enough, so they closed the servers in 2010. So that's basically what it comes down to. Instead of being able to provide ourselves with the content, i.e., operating the desired purpose of a purchased or attained object or device with the intent of enjoyment, entertainment, or functional usage, we are forced to experience it while and when we can. relegated to how long the infrastructure of the content is available and how much maintenance the developers have planned after the content is created. That's some old bullshit. In no other form of marketing or commerce is this relatable. In my humble opinion, this needs to change. Only in video gaming will you hear the tale of a business making hundreds of billions of dollars for a game not even out of its development cycle, or in the blurred term of early access. You can't claim a movie came out unfinished. You can't claim a car purchase was missing an engine. Only in video games is this an issue. Double back to Cyberpunk 2077. Now, I am not an avid fan of CDPR. Never really got into the Witcher series, save watching the adaptation on Netflix, which I enjoyed. But I've never really given my time or effort to a true CD Projekt Red property or series. Just haven't. I also didn't become aware of the tabletop franchise of Cyberpunk until around the actual announcement of Cyberpunk 2077, and did all my resulting research about Mike Pondsmith and his overarching narrative only after. To me, a shallow diver into the lore, Cyberpunk 2077 is exactly what it set out to be. A video game representation of the madness and mayhem that is Night City, but dumbed down to work for a solo gamer's experience. Will there be additions to the game? Hopefully. Will there ever be a multiplayer component? Possibly, if people take their heads out of their asses. There are countless game releases that have been lackluster to be pleasant and downright horrendous to be brutal. And many of those games have either gotten better over time or have been forgotten in the meme bin as horrible ideas at the start. My challenge to my audience is, do you really care? There are countless YouTubers making relative comparisons between games like GTA, Fallout 76, Red Dead 2, Cyberpunk 2077, and other similar sandbox games. But why? Why are we comparing these things when none of them have ever been perfect? And many of them can't do the same things. Why aren't we more in celebration as to the differences, or the benefits of owning the differing franchises? Because at the end of the day, the power fantasy and escapism is what we're playing for in the first place, right? We can argue for decades to come on why GTA 5 is the best open world sandbox game available, and still forget all the things it did wrong upon launch, or how much of the actual advertised content was missing or still relatively unfulfilled. Or we can enjoy the content it provides. We can complain about all the things it could not do, or celebrate all the things it successfully accomplished. And that is what I choose to do with Cyberpunk 2077. In no game I have ever played have I felt so enthralled by not only the story, glitch and bugs and all, but the setting as well. Not Skyrim, not GTA 5. None have had me running around on foot through nearly every alleyway, attempting to open nearly every door, and trying to fight every enemy. None. And I think that's something worth celebrating, or at least noting. In closing, and an apology, this isn't a Cyberpunk 2077 review, nor is it a proper explanation of all the reasons I feel this game is still, yep, still, my game of the year. But maybe I'll get around to that. All I know is that in a forest of video game developers and IPs, Cyberpunk 2077 hasn't overwhelmed me with nonsense that has nothing to do with the game, weighed me down with silly microtransactions and pay-to-win systems, or hype me up for content I don't currently have access to. Many others have. And it's crazy that we don't give them more shit. But mark my words, if CDPR decides they do want to jump into the multiplayer scene, and they decide microtransactions are the way to go, I'll take it all back. Instead, CDPR, please focus on the tangible. The time, effort, and care that can potentially go into crafting a character, and allow our hard-earned credits to have value beyond just intangible vehicles we'll probably never use in the game. Because at the end of the day, you can't drive a virtual car. You can't use it to get from point A to point B in the real world, so it creates no value. But when a game company creates an in-game mechanic, a level, zone, sandbox, world, galaxy, and universe, you gotta start paying attention to what, why, and where you've been spending your money. Because the truth is, we create our own value. And nothing, not a thing, is truly precious. This is just a hustle, and I don't know shit. Except I hope you all are enriched with health and wealth. That's my 2 cents, if you pick it up or not. Peace.